Hi everyone, welcome to Watch It Play Table Talkback. My name is Rodney Smith and this is our budgie Harvey Walters. And the two of us are looking at your responses to the topic of apps being introduced into games and how, as a gaming community, do we feel about that. I would say that the majority of the responses expressed a concern over app integration into games, and there was definitely some repetition in terms of people's opinions. So I'm going to try to find the responses that I feel best summarize and clarify some of those concerns, along with the other opinions as well. Christian Scholes Floater wrote, "The most important reason why I do not like electronic devices in-game is because board gaming and the use of electronics and electronic devices are different activities." Well, Christian, I think you'll find that Kurt is in complete agreement with you. Sort of.
We're rolling? Okay. Welcome, dear board gamers. My name is Kurt, and I'm the president of Board Game Apps Resistance Front, aka BARF. BARF? Really? Whoever shows that name, he's fired, okay? I'm sorry. I'm here to talk to you about apps in board games, because we don't like apps in board games. Why? Well, I tell you why. I want to play real board games like Alchemists, because I need cardboard. I want to have a board on the table. Yes, and I love my tokens. I want many tokens in my games. I like cards in my games. I love the smell of cards. I love shuffling cards. Hear the sound. So fun. Apps, no, they will destroy. What? How? What did? It's. Oh, it's got an app. Really? Okay. No. What I was telling you, what I wanted to tell you is, I love board games like XCOM the game, because you have this great big board in it. Oh, so beautiful. And there's more. You have these fantastic minis you can. Oh, I love it. And most of all, I need my dice. I love rolling those dice. Yes, that's what I need, because what? What? No, this also comes with an app. But there are so many pieces in these games, but this is still a board game. Fellow board gamers, I think there's nothing wrong with apps in board games.
Kurt makes an interesting point with that video, showing that although the apps are integral and necessary to playing those games, they still have all of the same trappings of your traditional Euros and Ameritrash games, all the cardboard and plastic that we like to use. So I'm not sure that app-integrated games, for me personally, really defines it as a separate and distinct kind of activity. But it certainly is a unique element to those games. And certain elements in games people just don't like. For example, some people don't like dice and the random chaos that it introduces into certain games. So I think probably it's fair to say that as an element, it changes the activity in some way that isn't always appealing to people. Karen Corrigan writes, "I like apps for board games as long as they don't become the focus of the game. I appreciate when they help with record keeping and rules like they do in Golem Arcana. For instance, Marvel's Legendary took me about an hour of explaining all of the little details to my family before we could start playing. We love it now, but getting to know the game was almost painful," which, by the way, led me to find your site on YouTube. Karen raises two very interesting points here. First of all, that yes, these apps can help in assisting you to learn the games and ensuring you don't make rules mistakes. But on the other hand, they may pose a threat to my livelihood, especially if they teach the games too well. Maybe I'm going to have to sign up for BARF as well, Kurt. No, actually, it's funny though, because when we did the video for XCOM, the app itself would teach you to play the game, but some people didn't like that they didn't have a paper copy of the rule book as well to follow along with. And I think as long as there's that desire for a rule book, then there'll always be room for a video as well. So I'm probably okay for a little bit yet. Ken Changer Nimotoni writes, I'm afraid that more publishers will choose the easy way out and implement apps into board games instead of adding components for a particular mechanic, because it's easier to sell an app than physical components which you have to produce in order to sell. Well, I can't say with certainty here, but I almost think that an app would be more complicated, potentially more expensive to create and design for. So I'm not sure it's really the easy way out compared to, say, printing a sheet of tokens or some additional decks of cards or including dice. When you think about an app, you've got multiple platforms to program for potentially. You've got the code programming itself and the requirements, the specialty that requires. And then, of course, you still have art and sound and animation assets that you have to create. So I think there's still quite a bit of complexity, and we won't see several publishers, except maybe the larger ones, integrating apps, at least in these early stages. But that said, I mean, the question still exists, how long will this last? Is this just a fad, or is this something that's going to stick around for a while? Joel Eddy has some comments on this.
Hey Rodney, you asked if an app or a game having an app would get you excited about that game. And I would say yes, but for a short time. Now, there's 3 games that I've played that have apps. They've got Golem Arcana, XCOM, and Alchemist. Now, Golem Arcana is interesting because the app actually condenses a complex rule set and sort of turn-by-turn management and puts it in the app. And it also brings in sort of outside results and sort of this massively multiplayer board game idea where somebody's outcome affects somebody else's, puts that into the app and connects that to the internet. And then you've got XCOM, which takes care of a timer aspect and also does a little bit of sort of the bookkeeping and drives the AI to some extent. I haven't been able to quite figure out how much of an extent the AI actually becomes involved, but there's definitely room to expand if it's kind of, milquetoast right now. And then there's Alchemist, which basically works as a sort of a glorified way of hiding information and randomizing, the results of your potions. So beyond those sort of stipulations, you've got, condensing rules, driving AI and, making complex interactions a little bit more accessible and presentable right to the players immediately without having to do much of bookkeeping and math. And you've got the whole internet connection. So that's all kind of been done. We've got 3 games that have explored the way an app can work in very different ways. Now there's another game coming out, World of Yuho or Yoho, where your phone is actually a piece in the game, and it's sort of like this little pirate ship that moves around, and you pick it up, and then it has all this hidden information that only you can see what's happening on the boat. Then you put it back out, and then it becomes the boat again. So that's another interesting aspect. So I think the boundaries are going to be pushed, and I'm really excited about that. But I don't know how wide open that space is. There's a certain extent where it's going to become basically a turn-based computer game at some point if you can go certain directions with it. So I think there's some space to explore, but I also think at the end of the day that space is going to probably get explored pretty quickly. Now we'll see about that, but I would say for now it gets me excited, but I'm not sure how long that will last, and I think there's probably a cliff here maybe at the end of 2016 where it's not going to be cool anymore.
It will be interesting to see if this app innovation falls off a cliff or if they find ways to keep it fresh and relevant. You think about deck building as an example, and when that first became really popular, it felt like every new game was trying to figure out how to become a deck builder or to integrate deck building in as an element. And I feel like that has petered off somewhat. So we'll see. We'll see how app integration rides this current wave that it's on. Oh, one thing I'd like to see as an innovation are holographic miniatures. So you have a base, but it projects an animation of your figure that can strike poses, and maybe as you collect gear, it updates on the figure itself. That would be super cool, but probably a ways off. David Brown writes, I think one issue could be a power one. Say you have a device that you forgot to charge, or the battery runs down quickly because the app is running on it. You know what, this is actually a very practical concern. Don't you agree, Harvey? He agrees. I actually played games where this has happened, where I realized, oh no, the battery on my device is about to die. Or, if you're playing a game and the app crashes and you lose the hour-and-a-half or more time that you invested playing the game with your friends, that'd be pretty frustrating. So that's certainly a downside to apps and games, and something that these designers need to consider. For example, Alchemist does a nice job of this because when you start a game, it provides you with a code. And so if the app was to crash or you ran out of battery, you could just bring up the app again, even on another device, and enter that code, and it would reinstall or reset up your game state. William McGinnis writes, as an old gamer from all the way back to 1972, I would really appreciate some way of using an app for the old style hex and counter war games. Harvey agrees. Also, deduction style games might find super cool ways to utilize the technology. William, I have to apologize for Harvey. He gets all riled up just thinking about the topic of war games and how they're not as popular. He'd like to see them be. He's very passionate about the topic, and once he gets squawking about it, he won't stop, so I had to remove him from the room until he just calms down from the whole ordeal. But he did want me to say to you, Commander of the Great War is an app you might want to check out that certainly seems inspired by those hex and counter war games. But I also think you've hit on something interesting with deduction games and app integration. I was thinking about Spectre Ops, which is a game where you have one player who controls an agent secretly moving around the board, trying to complete objectives and escape, while the rest of the players are hunters trying to track that player down. Well, you could have an app that uses artificial intelligence to control the agent. So then all of the players are just working together cooperatively. And then that got me thinking how you could have it so that the hunters are actually bounty hunters. They're not working together. They're trying to be the first to find the AI-controlled agent, eliminate them, and collect the reward. You wouldn't even really need an app for that variant, I suppose. But maybe that's perhaps one of the benefits there, because I saw in a lot of the comments the concern being that the app is a necessary component. So then if you don't have the app, you can't play the game. So in that proposal there, in a deduction style game, you wouldn't necessarily need the app, it's just an option. Brady Cooper does a nice job, I think, of summarizing some of those concerns about the longevity of apps and games. Let me just read that out now. Technology advances so fast that what works now may be completely obsolete in several years. What's going to happen when the iPhone 8 is out? Will the apps that are required for board games today be updated to support these new phones? This problem has already been experienced in the board game industry. Remember those games from the early 90s that used VHS tapes to guide the players? Yes, I do. These are useless now without the ability to play a VHS tape. People have solved this issue by uploading the required videos to YouTube, but the level of interactivity in app integration that we are seeing in board games today isn't so easily solved. One of the things that I like about board gaming as a hobby is that when I make a purchase, I know that I can play this game 20 years from now and get the same experience. Board games that utilize technology, especially those as heavily integrated as XCOM, may not be playable in 20 years. This is a compelling concern, but I wonder if it is a problem that does have a solution. You actually kind of hinted at it in your own comments there, that VHS tapes are being brought over to YouTube for people who may still be playing those games today and want to continue enjoying them. And in today's digital age, I would think games releasing now will be easier to archive for the future. But Matt Evans, who works in the tech field, has some thoughts and comments as well and probably can speak to it better than I can.
Hey Rodney, Matt here to weigh in on this week's Table Talk discussion. Now in front of me here I have the Omega Virus. This is a 1992 Milton Bradley mass market game. This is a cool digital board game. It's got a simple AI that kind of keeps track of room numbers, and you got to go chase down this virus and pick up gear and things like that. But this game, this is all encompassed in the device. The game is itself. So if this electronic device dies and it breaks for whatever reason, I'm done. I have no way to play this game anymore. And I know a lot of concern people have is that, oh, XCOM, if I buy that in 20 years, I'm not going to be able to play it. Now, I disagree with that because modern days now, with all the software, you've got Android apps, you've got iOS apps, PC apps, and this modern technology we have today and all the archiving that we do, there's no way that you're going to lose the app for a popular game like XCOM. And I think Quinn's actually over at Shut Up and Sit Down for their review of XCOM. He said something I thought was great. He basically pointed out the fact that in the XCOM description, the insane archivist over at Board Game Geek are keeping track of box dimensions of games to 2 decimal places. So that's the level of detail they're going to save and archive and have information about games. There's no way they're going to let the app slip away out of existence. So I think we're always going to have that. I like the digital board game stuff. So far, what I've seen has been excellent. I look forward to seeing what they can do with it in the future.
I tend to agree with Matt here. I think in particular because of where we are now with technology and archiving of information. If you think of a game from the 90s, and forget a VHS-based game, but just a traditional board game, if you had that today, and the dog ate your rulebook, that could render your game obsolete. Because back then, people were not archiving rulebooks the way they are now. In fact, you don't have to archive them. Today, most publishers will release a digital version of the rulebook. In fact, that digital version is likely to be more up-to-date because they sometimes make changes to them. So you'd prefer to have the digital version over the hard copy. And even the apps. Let's say Fantasy Flight Games decided to not support the app anymore. I think you'll find if the game is popular or has even the slightest bit of notoriety, there'll be someone who creates a fabrication of the app for people to use. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see people creating apps for games that are currently popular, variants of those apps. So I think because of how technology has evolved and where we are today, games becoming obsolete is less likely. Anderson Barbosa wrote, "I'm new to board games, but the way I see it, the devices will never replace board games, the same way that video games didn't." Anderson wrote more, but I thought this element of his comment was really interesting because one could certainly say board games have already been replaced by technology. They're called video games. But of course, they didn't replace board games, despite the fact that video games are oftentimes more flashy, easier to use, arguably cheaper when you think about the games you could find on Steam. But they haven't replaced board games. And I think you could even say, in part, the resurgence of board games is a pushback against video games. People are looking for a different kind of activity, and I think that will probably always be true. Even with perhaps a growing trend of app integration into board games, there will still always be publishers, designers, and people looking for games that don't have app integration, just like there'll be people looking for games that don't have miniatures, or that are more Euro than Amerithrash, and so on. But of course, that doesn't mean you have to like any particular trend, including app integration. And you might share Dave's opinions.
What do I think of cell phones and board games? Well, I have the latest iPhone, I have iPads, I have several computers, I have my Roku on my TV. I don't even think I watch cable anymore. I just watch TV on my computer and my Roku. So I'm kind of a technophile, and I'm pretty much a fan of technology overall, but I have to say I draw the line in my board games. That's the one time where you need to sit down with your family or your friends and just be analog. And I know it's going to happen. I know that we're going to have technology intertwined. And maybe if we had the tablet, the table tablet where, the board was the screen, I can't say that I wouldn't be enticed by that, but I don't want everybody looking into their phone, and I don't want to have a phone in order to play a game. So I'm going to have to vote that down and say, you know what, for me, I'd rather buy a game that doesn't require any kind of a cell phone or tablet or, So that's my vote for whatever that's worth. Thanks.
Ian O'Toole shares a similar point of view with Dave and with a number of you, and he says, "I spend the majority of my working life dealing with a computer and really don't want to do it when I'm gaming. Unlike a lot of people here, I don't play video games anymore as board games have completely replaced them. I'm in love with the physicality of board games and the fact that they don't crash or need to be updated, unless you count an errata. So while I don't begrudge anyone their digitally enhanced game, nor think it signals the end of analog gaming, it's not something that gets me excited at all." And this is where someone like myself, who doesn't mind app integration, can sympathize and actually agree with. There are times I just don't want to be looking at another screen. Thank you very much. And so I would say no to certain games at certain times because of that. And really, this is what it comes down to, isn't it? It's personal preference. It's what you're looking for in the hobby. It's what you want to get out of the activity. In the same way, as I said before, that some people just don't want to see dice as an element in a game that they play. Or as Mega Yoma says, the line should be drawn at the pop-o-matic. Right? Some people just don't want to see certain elements enter their games. And as we saw, Harvey's preference is war games. But take heart, Harvey, because even in that genre of the hobby, which I would say is less popular than other ones, there's still new games coming out, new innovations there. And I think that will probably remain true for all of our various interests and differences. Thanks everyone for participating in this conversation. Certainly feel free to continue doing so in the comments below this one. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.